All right, good evening. That was a really quick transition. Thank you. That was amazing. You must have read the sign, Mind Your Matter. So welcome to the UCSF Innovator Seminar Series. My name's Einor Sawyer. My colleague, Nate Prorock, is the right-hand person on this mission. And we have our Assistant Vice Chancellor, Peter Kutsonis, in the room with us for Innovation Ventures. And this is brought to you by the Innovator Enrichment Program within Innovator Ventures. And we've had a series of these, which we're going to turn into an innovator curriculum for our frontline innovators at UCSF. And you probably saw parts of the flyer, the topics we're covering, but we'd love your input since this is the pilot window up until July, and we're going to start with the curriculum after that. Tonight, we are extremely fortunate to be having a session on what we call Pitch Perfect. A compelling idea deserves a compelling story. We have two distinguished guests. One online will be Guy Kawasaki, who's really, we consider him the godfather of the innovation pitch world, and he'll be giving us a really exciting talk with his information has been recently updated in a book that he's called Think Remarkable, and he'll be putting some of that influence into his talk tonight. And rather than a primer on just slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, it's going to be really much more how do you bring your game up. And we have in the room usually and online, we have a group of people online as well, usually from pre-innovator all the way to serial innovator. And so a broad range of experience, but on this topic, everyone can always improve. So I think we'll have something for everyone here tonight. So we'll do some brief intro remarks, then we'll switch over to Guy Kawasaki's presentation with some Q&A afterwards. And then we have another guest, Margaret Laws, with us, who is CEO of Hope Labs, and we'll tell you more about that later, and formerly with the California Healthcare Foundation Innovation Program. So we're very lucky. She's given and received many pitches and coached many people. So after Guy's talk, we'll be getting perspectives from a really seasoned person in the pitch world. And we'll do sort of a moderated panel discussion then. I just want you to know we have institutional level commitment to innovation at UCSF. And Catherine Lucy, you probably know as our executive vice chancellor and provost, and she firmly states that UCSF's top priorities include inspiring, identifying, and investing in our frontline innovators who are translating novel ideas into beneficial impact at scale for healthcare and life sciences. And so we're very fortunate at this university to have that kind of endorsement and true enthusiasm for this. This is just a real simple picture of what one part of our role at Innovation Ventures is, and that is to get your novel, impactful, and scalable ideas all the way from idea to impact. And that means moving them through the process of eventually licensing out of the university. The other thing we do is we really want to go upstream and help frontline innovators develop, not just develop innovations, but develop the innovators. And I put this up there, and you can take a picture of the QR code, because this will give you decks to talk about Innovation Ventures, but underneath you'll see other decks that are examples of what are some of the innovators and the innovations that are building in UCSF and that have already spun out. So you'll see some pre-licensing and some also post-licensing or pre-cos and new cos. And I think it'll help inspire you, and it'll also give you some people to contact. This is just a quick slide to tell you what we're doing in innovator enrichment. This is really to support frontline innovators. And we always say no bees, no honey, and we want to go upstream. So we found a picture with all of that in it. But it's really to help really improve the innovator experience, environment, and ecosystem at UCSF. We are fertile soil for innovation. We have a good track record, a huge track record, and we're in one of the buildings that proves that, Genentech Hall. But we are always looking to improve that experience, environment, and ecosystem for you. And besides that, we have a kind of a multi-component program in innovator enrichment. And instead of going through all of this, each time we do a seminar, we try to highlight what are some of the current announcements we'd like to get across, because we can get all this information across to you through the website. But Nate's going to highlight some of the announcements we want to get across before we switch over to the main program.
Great, thanks, Einar. I wanted to share with you all a few innovation resources and opportunities that we do here at Innovation Ventures. So this first one is UCSF NSF iCore, and this is centered around the idea of customer discovery. So this 2 week, 3 session, it's only 3 hours each one, really trains an innovator the questions of how to ask their potential customers for their innovation. So you have an innovation, fantastic, that's great. Now let's figure out who will be your users. What kind of questions do you want to have there so that you can continue to improve that project based on customer discovery and customer feedback. You could also refer to that your customers as your stakeholders. Another one I wanted to highlight is the Global Life Sciences Healthcare Entrepreneurship course. This is run by Stephanie Maris, and I see Inders in the room. So this is a phenomenal resource that we have at Innovation Ventures for entrepreneurs to really develop their ideas even further. There are many sessions on pretty much anything you ever would need to know about entrepreneurship, and Stephanie and Inder run a fantastic class. And then this third one, this is very informal. Twice a year at UCSF Innovation Ventures, we team up with a few different groups across the Bay Area, and we do a happy hour. This is just an opportunity for folks to come in, mix and mingle, talk about their ideas, talk about their problems, talk about what excites them. So again, super informal, just another fun way to meet other innovators and to continue to grow this ecosystem. Thank you very much.
All right. What's really interesting is we're just one group putting on things. There are many other groups, and there's a new group on campus that's putting on something called an Ideathon. And this is combining clinicians with problems in a specific area that they're presenting to students who will then coalesce and form teams around it. So this is happening on April 10th. It's the first one, and we'll see how that goes and support the series of these. The topic is stromal tissue and health. All right, let's move on to tonight's topic. I'm really excited to be able to present to you a little bit of an elevated discussion about the pitch. And many people have heard of the pitch and the 10 slide, but what we're trying to show you is it's not just for you trying to get money from an investor. Many people think of that as the pitch. But it's really, how do you tell a story to bring other people along and inspire them that the idea you're working on is really important? Whether it's your chairman and you're trying to justify why you're spending time on this instead of what they thought you were doing, or you're speaking to a potential grantor, or you're trying to recruit team members on board to work with you on your idea. All of those things are times when you want to tell a really influential story about why what you're doing is important, meaningful, and that they should join you and support you in your effort. So this is something you've probably seen many times online, and it's continually revised and updated. This is from Guy Kawasaki's work, and he's going to actually give you resources at the end of his talk. So instead of us walking through each slide, we're going to have that tool at the very end. Well, you'll get that straight from Guy Kawasaki. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Guy Kawasaki, and he's the chief evangelist of Canva. Many of you have seen that tool or used it yourself. Author of Think Remarkable. He's actually written, I think, 10 books or more, but this is his latest. He has a podcast. He also has many postings online that you can follow him in. He's also an adjunct professor at University of California, Santa Cruz. And I think he's probably a tenured faculty in the surfing department there. He was the chief evangelist of Apple, Mercedes-Benz, brand ambassador, and a trustee of the Wikimedia Foundation. And he's also written The Art of the Start 2.0, Art of Social Media, Enchantment, 12 other books. He has a BA from Stanford University and his MBA from UCLA and an honorary doctorate from Babson College. And I am very pleased to turn over the presentation to Guy at this point. I would like to ask that people keep their microphones muted and be as quiet as possible in the room. Guy has shared with us that he currently has a hearing deficit, has a cochlear implant. I asked him if it was from surfing. Many of you who surf will know that the ears are pretty sensitive to cold water, but he explained to me that there's another reason, which he'll share with you himself. But please keep the noise down. We'll do Q&A afterwards, and we'll have it as a moderated Q&A. So Guy, we're going to switch off of this deck if you're ready to share yours.
Yes, I am. But first, let me thank you for this opportunity to talk to your members and your students and your faculty and whoever else is out there. I have a soft spot in my heart for UCSF because one of my sons was born there. So we used to live on Union Street in the Presidio, and at that point we had a son from UCSF. It was a flawless delivery. So unlike many pitches, it was flawless. Although it's easy for the man to say I figured that out. So I'm here today wearing the hat of, let's just say, an OG from the Valley, and I'm going to give you my top 10, actually 11 tips on how to make a remarkable presentation, a remarkable pitch, either one. And as you heard, very astute observation already that a pitch is not only for money, and we'll get into that. But most people, when they hear the word pitch, it's about money. So this is kind of slanted that way, although evangelism is evangelism. Okay, so now I'm going to start sharing my desktop, and you should now see this desktop. This is how to make a remarkable pitch. And please tell me, somebody, that you see that, because you just never know as the Zoom presenter.
Yes.
We good? All right. Yes. So was that the smoothest absolute transition from video of somebody's face to his desktop? That's like, yeah, we worked on that for hours and hours. So anyway, as you heard, I am the chief evangelist of Canva. I used to be the chief evangelist of Apple. I've had a lot of failures between those two bookends of my career. And I have pitched, I have raised tens of millions of dollars. I have been pitched, thousands of times. And as you heard, I have a cochlear implant. I am deaf, and I attribute my deafness not to surfing, not to genetics. It's all the shitty pitches that I've heard over 40 years in Silicon Valley. So this is an occupational hazard if you've ever been a venture capitalist, and I have been. So I'm trying to prevent deaf in Silicon Valley. That's another one of my goals in life. So now I use a top 10 format all the time. I believe in 10 slides. That's like, I think that is the limit of the human mind to understand 10 topics. That's actually kind of generous in my mind. So I'm going to give you my 10 top tips, and then we're going to do some moderated Q&A. The Q&A has to be either through the chat or re-said to me, because it's going to be very difficult for me to hear the random person in the audience. So that's how we're going to do it. All right. So you have to, all HIPAA aside, you have to make a few changes when you have a deaf presenter. So slide number one, it says grok, the goal. Grok, if you haven't heard the term, is like to truly understand that. And we already touched on this a little bit, but so many people, they think that the purpose of a pitch when you're raising money specifically is to use such shock and awe that at the end of a 60-minute pitch, the venture capitalist, the angel capitalist, whatever it is that you're pitching for money, that they believe they are so profoundly moved, shock and awe, and all they want to know is, how do we wire you money? So many entrepreneurs believe that the goal of a pitch is to raise money after an hour, and that is just not how it works. So you need to understand that the purpose of a pitch, even not for money, even for support or partnership, or even for joining the company, the purpose of a pitch is to not be eliminated. Because the process of raising money is a very long process. And along the way, 99% of the companies get eliminated. So the purpose is not to be asked for a wire transfer information. It is to be just left in the game. You are not rejected. So grok the goal. The goal is to not be rejected. You want to get to the next step. And the next step is due diligence. It's not a wire transfer. So understand, get this in your brain. Don't be disappointed if you don't get asked for wire instructions. You just declare victory if they say, we would like to have a follow-on meeting, we would like to start due diligence, that is the absolute best case outcome of most people's pitches. Number two is like, I've met with many people who are trying to pitch me, and it's clear that some of them, they just don't have any selection process. They have no idea who they're talking to. All they know is, well, this guy's a venture capitalist, this guy's an investor, so I'm going to pitch him. So if you went to somebody who does bio devices, medical devices, if that's the kind of venture capitalist you're pitching, and then you take in a consumer social media platform, or you take in some hardware, or you're pitching them on a restaurant, or you're pitching them on a like home appliance or some kind of new camera, and you're talking to someone who traditionally does life sciences, you are fundamentally flawed. You have to select your prospects. Listen, I understand the concept of spray and pray. I've done it many times, but you need to select the prospects, even inside the particular venture capital firm. So in a venture capital firm, there may be an enterprise software guy, there may be a hardware gal, there may be life sciences, there may be consumer, there may be a lot of different partners with their specialties. And your job is to go after the partner with the specialty in your area. And if you go after someone who's never done a similar deal, never been in that market, you're kind of eliminating yourself at step one, because what it communicates to people is, this person is so lazy, this person is so stupid. I'm a life sciences venture capitalist, and they're pitching me a C2C consumer device. It makes no sense. So you have to select your prospect. And, God forbid, I mean, every venture capitalist has an about page where they list the partners, and the partners, what companies they sit on the boards of, what companies they invested. They're practically telling you what kind of company they want. So if you don't do that much, you deserve to be eliminated right away. Step number three is the concept that you are going to send your presentation, or send your business plan, or send your executive summary to a firm, even if you have the name, because in step two, you did your homework and you found the right person. And you think you're going to send that email, or you're going to send a FedEx package or something, and it's going to get the attention it merits. You are badly mistaken. If you could go into some of these offices or see the inbox of some of these people, they get dozens and dozens of pitches every day, electronically and analog. So the way it works is, you need to get an introduction to these people. And these introductions have to come from sources that the capitalist depends on, that the capitalist likes. So if I were a venture capitalist, and a corporate finance attorney from Wilson Sonsini called me up and said, listen, I did the Google deal, I did the Salesforce deal, I did the Apple deal, I did the Hewlett Packard deal, I did the Facebook deal. And I'm telling you, I have never met an entrepreneur as intelligent as this guy or this gal. So I want you to take a look at their pitch. I guarantee you that any venture capitalist with above a room temperature IQ will take the appointment. So you want an introduction from a corporate finance attorney, from an accountant, or a professor who says, yeah, I'm a professor of physics or mathematics or computer science at UCSF. And these are the two brightest students I have ever had in my career. They have a great idea. The science is there. I think you should take a look at them. I guarantee you, you will get an appointment. You will get to pitch your idea. So the thing is that, do not think that anything over the transom, dear sir, dear madam, dear whatever, email, analog, is going to work. It's not going to work. It takes a call or an email from a trusted source to get in the door. That's what you need. Oh, one more. Oh, God, go back for a second. One more really great source of introductions is someone in the portfolio of the venture capital firm. So let's say that you're dealing with a firm and they funded, I'm making this up, maybe they funded Salesforce. So they get an email from Mark Benioff saying, listen, my college roommate, my buddy, I've known him for years. I used to work with him at Oracle. I used to work with him at Salesforce, and now he's starting a company. I guarantee you that if you find someone in the portfolio of a firm and introduces you to the people who funded that company from the firm, you will probably get a meeting. Of course, this is kind of a duhism, but it has to be from a company that is successful and well liked in the portfolio. I wouldn't go to a loser company and say, could you recommend me to the people who gave you the money that you lost? That is not going to work. So another source of great introductions. Number four is you have to start doing your homework. Yes, it's important to identify the right place, identify the right person, but now you really need to do your homework. And God bless us, man. LinkedIn is the best thing that ever happened for this, because you can do your homework about the partner you're trying to contact. Look at his or her LinkedIn account. Like, what school did they go to as an undergrad? Where did they get their graduate degree? Where did they work in their companies? Who do you know in common? You're looking for all these points of connections. You want to show them when you meet with them, oh, this guy knows my background. He knows that I went to UCSF. He knows that I got an MBA from Stanford. He knows that I worked for Facebook, and we have common people that we both know from Meta, and all this kind of stuff. But you need to do your homework. It goes far beyond picking the right firm and the right person. You need to do your homework and absolutely know that person's life. Where did he or she go to school? Where did he or she work? Who are your friends in common? All that kind of stuff. And everything, absolutely everything, is online. And I bet you if you simply went to Chat GPT and you said, I'm pitching a venture capitalist at Sequoia Capital, this is her name, please tell me her background, please tell me what she is interested in, please tell me that how can I pitch her? And I would be very confident that ChatGPT will give you some great ideas. Number five is now you have to craft your story. And let me tell you something, everybody who pitches at some point says something as stupid and it is insipid as, we have patent pending, curve jumping, paradigm shifting, revolutionary, innovative product. Every joker says that. So you need to craft your story. Like some of the stories that worked in the past is, when you started eBay, Pierre Omidyar used to tell this story that his girlfriend, now wife, was a Pez dispenser collector and she had no way to sell it. So he created eBay. Well, that story is total bullshit, but I mean, it is a great story. It is a better story than saying, well, I majored in economics and I learned in microeconomics where the supply curve and the demand curve crosses. That's the market clearing perfect price, but it's hard to get the market clearing perfect price because information is not clear, because not everybody can list their product. Not everybody can list their used HP printer. And on the flip side, on the demand side, not everybody knows that somebody in, Bernal Heights or, Sausalito is selling this HP printer. So how can we have a perfect market if the buyer doesn't know who the seller is and the seller doesn't know who the buyer is? So I created eBay to make this perfect market clearing price. I tell you, the story of my girlfriend wanted to sell Pez dispensers is a much better story. So you have to craft a story. And the story is like, why did you create this company? And the answer is not to make a lot of money. It is about how you intend to make the world a better place, how you intend to make people's lives better. By creating this printer, by creating this oscilloscope, by creating this computer, by creating this website. What's the story of Canva? The story of Canva is not that, oh, Melanie and Cliff figured out that many people need to make graphics, so we're going to tap that market and all we need is 1% of that market. The story of Canva is that Melanie and Cliff were in Western Australia, in Perth, and they were teaching students how to use Photoshop and Illustrator. And they quickly learned that Photoshop and Illustrator is too hard for most people. It's too expensive. It takes too long. So they thought there must be a better way. So they started Canva. That's the kind of story you want. The story that shows like their personal involvement, how they came to this very logical and powerful and meaningful conclusion that they should start the company. It's not because they work for Goldman Sachs and they flew around in a Gulfstream. So they said, wow, we got to get a Gulfstream too. So let's start a company. Number six. Number six is something that you probably already know, but now is the time to make your slides. And you know about my rule. My rule is you have 10 slides. You have 20 minutes to give those 10 slides. And the absolute minimum size, minimum, the word is minimum size font is 30 points. You see on your computers right now that my 3 bullet points, they are in 30 points. My headlines are in like 90 points. So I truly do believe that the bigger the font, the better the pitch. And the smaller the font, the worse the pitch. And so I set 30 as a kind of a meaningful, most people use 8, 10, or 12. So I'm asking them to triple their font size. But in a perfect world, I would tell you make everything 50 or 60 points. But then again, from a pure marketing standpoint, the 10, 20, 60 rule, it just doesn't roll off your tongue. It's not as memorable as 10, 20, 30. 10, 20, 30 is a much better way to call it than 10, 20, 60. So make your slides, 10 slides. Again, you'd be lucky to get 10 points across. You may have a 1-hour time slot, but your computer is not going to hook up to their projector. Partners are going to be late. Partners are pulled out. Something's going to happen. And if you have a power pack 20 minutes, there's going to be a lot of questions. So you're going to appreciate if you have 40 minutes to discuss your company after the pitch. So that's it. Make your slides, 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30-point font. Number seven is cut the bullshit in your presentation. Oh, what are some bullshit terms? Well, one bullshit term is every adjective I just said, like patent pending, curve, jumping, innovative, revolutionary, first mover advantage. Cut all that bullshit out, because the pitch that was before you and the pitch that's after you, they're all gonna say that, and all we need is 1% of this large and growing market. Just cut all that bullshit out. I mean, that's a way to get to 10 slides and 30-point font, because you don't have to say that bullshit. Because I tell you something, you could apply what I call the opposite test. And the opposite test works like this. So pretend you are competing with somebody, and you want to differentiate yourself from this competition. So you go and you listen to the competitor, and the competitor says, we have patent pending, curve jumping, paradigm shifting, revolutionary, innovative, easy to use, well documented, bug free software. So that's what they say. And that's what you've been saying, right? So everybody says the same thing about the products. You need to cut the bullshit, and you need to come up with a different description. Get out of the acronyms, get out of all the alphabet soup. Just cut the bullshit. A very good test would be that the spouse of any of the partners in this meeting, when they say to their husband or wife, well, did you see anything interesting today? The husband or wife can repeat what you do. Honey, I saw this company, and instead of using Photoshop or Illustrator, you just go to this website. They have all the design types figured out already. That's Instagram posts, eBay stores. It's Twitter, God forbid Twitter, if you'd ever use Twitter again. It's Facebook. It's making presentations, infographics. All of those design types have been figured out. And within each design type, there are hundreds of templates. So all you need to do is pick a template, change the text, change the pictures, and bada bing, bada bang, you have a finished graphic. That is a story. It's not about the bullshit of, my God, there's 10 billion people with access to the internet. If they're all on social media and they make one graphic a day, that's 10 billion graphics a day. We only need 1% of 10 billion graphics. That is total unequivocal bullshit. So cut out the bullshit. Number eight. Number eight is, you may think that you are a natural speaker, that you're just going to rise to the top because you're gifted and you're going to just knock them out with your awe and your. I hate to disappoint you, but everybody needs to practice. I would say that you shouldn't even give your pitch to anybody without giving it at least 10 times. Give it to your dog, give it to your cat. Even better, record it on your phone and go through the pain, and it will be painful, of watching yourself give that pitch. But practice at least 10 times. You'd think, I'm the next Steve Jobs. I don't need to practice. I'm a natural. Well, let me tell you something. When Steve Jobs used to give Macworld Expo demos, he would practice for weeks. For weeks, he would practice much more than 10 times. And I'm telling you something, if Steve Jobs needed to practice for weeks, you are not a Steve Jobs. You need to practice even more. I have never seen an entrepreneur who practiced too much. Number nine. Number nine is, I want you to be like Maverick in Top Gun. All right. So there are two kinds of airplanes in the world. Let's just generalize. So one is like a A380 or a 747 or a 787. The other is an F-16 or an F-15 or F-18, right? So here are these two kinds of airplanes. So if you're in a 787 and you're at SFO, you have 2 miles of runway, and you start at the beginning and you rumble down the runway, and at 1.5 miles, you are off in the air, and the miracle has occurred again that 500,000 pounds or whatever a 787 weighs has gotten into the air, but after 1.5 miles of rumbling down a runway. On the other side, we have Maverick, and Maverick is in the Indian Ocean. He's on an aircraft carrier. He's in an F-15 or F-18 or, I don't know, whatever kind of plane they fly off an aircraft carrier. And poor Maverick, poor Tom Cruise, he has about 150 meters. And if he doesn't get airplane off the deck in 150 meters, he falls into the ocean. He probably drowns, and he loses a $30 million airplane. All right. So Maverick, the guy on the carrier deck, he's like in that colored shirt, and he waves and he goes boom, and you just gotta get off the deck in 150 meters. And I want you to think you have got to be like Tom Cruise. You have got to be like Maverick, not the United Airlines 787 pilot. So what is this metaphor trying to get at, guys? So I'm telling you, that's why I'm deaf. I've sat in thousands of meetings, and most people start a pitch like the 787 pilot from United Airlines with 1.5 miles of runway. They want to tell you their family story. My family came over, on the Mayflower. They settled in Delaware. They opened up a hardware store. The hardware store was successful. So finally, I was able to go to Ivy League school because my great-great-grandfather gave a building to Yale. I graduated from Yale. I had a summer job at McKinsey. I had a summer job at Goldman Sachs. I moved to the West Coast. I got an MBA at UCSF or Stanford. That had an internship with Google, and blah 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 blah, and that's my background. Let me ask my CTO to explain his background, and then they go into a whole nother blurb. As you know, security is important, and there are such and such breakthroughs every day and breakdowns every day, and not all messages are totally encrypted, and I'm telling you, the audience is sitting there saying, what the hell does this company do? We learned that his family came over in the Mayflower. We learned he went to Yale. We learned he worked for Goldman Sachs and McKinsey. We learned all that bullshit. But now we're 15 minutes into this meeting, and I still don't know what he does. Is it hardware? Is it software? Is it B2C, C2C? What the hell is it? Is it AI? Is it generative AI? It is LLM. Like, what the hell does he do? So I want you to always be thinking like Maverick. You have, well, Maverick had 1.5 seconds, but you have roughly 2 minutes, I would say tops. After 2 minutes, the audience should understand this is an enterprise software company. This is a social media company. This is an AI company. This is a life sciences company. This is an mRNA company. I mean, they need to understand immediately. Otherwise, they're going to be sitting there wondering, what the hell do they do? And until they figure out what the hell they do, they're not going to really be paying attention to you. Number 10. Number 10 is a little bit of performative advice. The performative advice is here that when you are in the meeting, I want you to whip out a tablet, paper or computer. I want you to whip out a pen or a stylus, and I want you to visibly take notes. And the reason why you do this is because, well, there is value in taking notes because you might not remember everything that was said or asked. But it's also very good PR because when you are seen taking notes, the other people in the audience who have been talking and questioning and, leading the meeting, they are going to notice that you're taking notes, and they're going to say, these people are disciplined. They are sincere. They are careful. They also understand that I'm saying something important. And so they are so disciplined and smart that they're taking notes. That is a very good sign because typically bullshit artists don't take notes, and you don't want to be a bullshit artist. So whip out that tablet, yellow legal pad, pencil, pen, fountain pen, I don't care, iPad with a stylus, and take notes. And number 11 as a bonus for you is that you take notes. There's going to be questions. There's going to be issues you don't want to discuss because it will take so long, or maybe you don't have the answer. But then after you take notes, I'll give you 24 hours. You follow up and you say, yesterday we met. Thank you very much for this opportunity. There are 3 or 4 questions that were asked, and I would like to provide greater information because now what this shows that not only were you smart enough to take notes, you are also disciplined enough to follow up with the notes that you took. And all of these little judgments are being made, and you might not even be conscious of it, but all these things, he's taking notes, she's taking notes, she's following up, she's following up. All those things add up to, we should take this company seriously. We should go to due diligence. We should take the next step and meet with them further. And as I said in slide number 1, that is the point of a pitch. So that's my 11 tips on how to have a remarkable pitch. And you can apply these principles not just to venture capital and raising money, but really, truly for just about any pitch. So now I'll be happy to take some questions.
All right. Well, first of all, I thank you. That was remarkable. It was truly remarkable. And for everyone who was here and got to witness it, there were so many pearls and gems in there from decades of terrific success in this. So thank you, Guy.
I wish you would stop saying that I'm so old and have decades of experience.
Wait, doesn't OG mean old guy in surfing?
It does, but it's not necessarily a positive thing.
I didn't bring it up. You brought it up earlier. I'm just trying to cut through the acronyms.
But it's okay for an OG to call himself an OG, but I don't think you should be saying, well, thank you for your decades of experience. I don't want to be one of the top 80 people under 80, let's just say.
Well, thank you. It's a gold mine for us to tap into your brain trust. I'd like to see, first of all, If there are questions in the chat, Guy, that you would like to start with, let me know. Otherwise, we'll take a question in the room to
Okay, I'm
start
looking
with.
for the chat here because, I was kind of
Okay, none
focused
in
on
chat
giving a
yet.
present.
Let's start with questions in the room.
Well,
Oh, can I ask you a question to start with? I'll take moderator's prerogative. You said that there was an updated version of the template. Is that in Canva? Because I can send the link out to everybody
yes,
afterwards.
it is in Canva, and I posted it in the chat session at the very top, but maybe it's not there anymore.
Oh,
So
if we
let me
post it again, a lot of people have joined since then. I think we have about 50
try that.
people in Zoom. Okay, so that link that he's put out, and I'll share it with people in the room, will take you, I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, so it takes you to a Canva site that has the top 10 slides that I think should be in every pitch. And it is not editable, right? Because if we made it editable and hundreds of people go and they change it, that kind of defeats the purpose. So what you do is you go to that and then you save yourself your own copy. You cannot edit that. That is the original. So you save yourself a copy.
It's sort of like Guy. You can't edit him. He's the original.
Because he's an OG.
I didn't say that. All right, let's take a question from the room then. I saw a hand go up. We're going to have a microphone with that person, so I won't repeat the question. Tell me if this works for you. Just speak nice and slowly if you would.
Sounds good. Hi, Guy. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Brandon Scott. I am a, excuse me, a physician. I'm a faculty in the Department of Medicine. And I will say one of my flaws with developing presentations is I go too heavy on the detail. And in thinking about one of your tips, which is, the 30-point font, the 10 slides, it made me think, are you relying more on the discussion when you're doing your pitches versus the content in the slide?
I would say that, if you are a professor of medicine, you are talking to very few people who are your educational peers, right? And so if you start going into like the deep dive into the concept of mRNA, I would suspect that you would lose 99% of even the life sciences investors. So I would try to keep it in general terms, and then if you keep it in general terms and you don't get eliminated, there will probably be a day where you're going to have to go into defend your PhD thesis and get right down to the molecular level. But in most pitch meetings, I would say there's one life sciences guy or gal, and the other person is enterprise and social media and B2C, B2B, a lot of different roles. And there's one or two people who are as nerdy as you about microbiology. So I would not try to just, I would make the presentation understandable to everybody as opposed to just talking to one person.
Thank you.
Great. And there's another question in chat from Paul Simpson. How important is it to show data in the initial pitch? And this is specifically for, say, life sciences.
Well, I would say that it should be a really simple graph. And when I say a simple graph, I mean that, your drug is 20% more effective than the one from, Johnson and Johnson, or there's that much less malpractice, or the recovery rate is much better. But it should really be black and white. It's like, okay, so people with hearing aids, their hearing is increased by 25% using a cochlear implant. I mean, it's that kind of number. It's not, well, if you ever find yourself using a stacked bar chart, or you're using a pie chart, and the pie chart has a legend with 10 different things, and the pie charts, like the slivers of the pie, there's the crosshatch red, there's the crosshatch magenta, and there's the pure black and pure blue, and you're saying, okay, so what what is that 5% over there in your pie chart? And oh, let me look at the stack bar chart or the stack bar chart. So let's see the big base. And then the second one, the base is smaller. And the second factor is bigger, but it doesn't look as tall because it's on something shorter. So really, a stack bar chart doesn't work. We should have just a freaking regular bar chart so I can just compare heights. I mean, that's the kind of decisions you should be making.
Hi, my name's Chelsea Bainey. Thank you so much for tonight. My question is maybe a little bit harder. I love all the tips you gave, but I've been really struggling with how to end the pitch with an ask, and whether that's part of the first pitch deck that the first question was, or if that's later, and if you have any advice on the ask.
Okay, the ask is, I would like to continue this discussion with you in further detail and to answer any issues that have come up or any questions that have come up. I think the key to you is to just continue the discussion. Now, you may think, well, Guy, why don't I just say I want 5 million at a $25 million pre? Well, because knock on wood, you don't know, 5 million, which is a nice round number. God forbid, like maybe they're willing to give you 2.5, but not 5. And they're going to say, well, she said she wanted 5. We think this is 2.5. So she's not going to be happy. So let's just throw her out. Like, let's just save time where, we're not willing to invest as much. And the other thing that could happen is if you start mentioning pre-money valuation, you think that you're putting out a reasonable number, but somebody who says, well, 5 million on 25 million pre, some people might say, wow, 25 million pre for 2 people in a garage who have, MDs and PhDs at UCF. How the hell do they figure that based on their PowerPoint, they have a $25 million pre-money valuation? Then you also have the opposite problem. And the opposite problem is, oh my God, these people have something that's bigger than mRNA, bigger than Viagra, bigger than, Cialis, bigger than anything we've ever heard. We would have given them 75 million pre, but they're only asking 25 million pre. Are they stupid, or, what's wrong here? So this is, I would say that you could kind of use a dating analogy, and you shouldn't exactly, hi, my name is Guy, I'm glad to meet you, let's go to the hotel room. I mean, you gotta like get a little due diligence here. You shouldn't be going for the close. The close is, hi, my name is Guy. Let's go get a drink together. In fact, to make it really safe, let's meet at Starbucks. We don't need to meet at a disco. And I'm not going to slip, some kind of drink into your cappuccino with your decaf and your, your soy milk. I mean, you just want a little slope that you're just trying to get to the next step. You're not trying to use shock and awe.
Great. Another question in chat. Is there a good time when you should share your background because it gives credibility to your idea?
Well, I mean, the answer to that is, of course, yes. I mean, if you're saying, well, I'm a professor of molecular biology at UCSF, and I figured out this new, mRNA method or RNA or DNA or whatever kind of method, yes. But if your background is Oriental art history and you say you have a cure for cancer, that might not be too helpful. And on the other hand, if you are saying that, you have this new social media thing and your background is, I don't know, agriculture, that might not be so good either. So yeah, if you have something relevant, I would like hold it up front to build your credibility. But I wouldn't just be throwing out degrees and numbers if it's completely contrary or orthogonal to what you're trying to pitch for.
We're going to take 2 more questions. And I know of one in the room down here, Margaret Laws. And because Guy is giving us really a generous amount of time here. So we'll have Margaret's question, and if there's one more after that, be sure to get your hand up in the air. And then we're going to switch over to the second part of the program. Go ahead, Margaret.
Hi, Guy. Great presentation. I'm Margaret Laws. I actually work for Pierre and Pam Omidyar, running one of their impact investment funds. So I know the Pez story well.
And you know it's a lie.
Exactly. I was curious about something. I hear a lot of pitches, and I was curious about something. I really appreciated your number 10, take notes. I wonder if you have any advice to offer about when someone comes in to make a pitch, them asking, how do you like to do this? Would you like me to go straight through? Would you like me to pause so you can be asking questions? Do you have thoughts about just that courtesy of coming in and,
I
and
think
asking that question?
I should have made that a 12 point. That is a very good way
You
to
can have
start.
it. I'll give you that one.
It is a very good point because, I mean, if you ask questions like, do you mind if we hold questions to the end so that I can just rip through my presentation and then we can have all the questions and interaction at the end? And some people will say yes, some people will say no, but it's just good to know that you're not differing for how meetings usually go. You could also ask questions like, let's see, do you mind if my co-founders sit in and I am going to do most of the presentation, but my co-founders are here just in case they have greater expertise. But not everybody has a speaking role. We didn't take an hour and divide it into 3, so each of us have 20 minutes. We didn't do stuff like that. And I think that shows it shows intelligence. It shows like, yeah, this person, of course, you could make the case that you should have asked your partner, whoever is bringing you into the meeting. So how do your meetings usually go? Do you like presentation? Do you just want to sit around? Would you like a demo? Would you like a long demo or short demo? Would you like a demo before the pitch? Or would you like a demo after the pitch or during the pitch? Would you like a hands-on? I mean, you could ask so many things. I mean, you're just trying to set yourself up so that you look prepared and you do and you deliver what they like to see.
Great. And one final question, I just put it in chat from Beverly Bigoton. Do you want your story to outlive your facts and figures? And if so, what are some examples of sound bites you want your audience to be coming from, whether it's different interests or what you want to leave the audience with?
Well, I believe in mantras as opposed to mission statements. And as you can imagine from somebody who is constantly harping on brevity, if you look at most companies, startup and established companies, most of them have a mission statement. And Maverick would never, ever have a mission statement. He would not go into a mission statement for the Navy, Blue Angels or the Navy SEALs, or he would just, I don't know, 3 words would be, rain death on our enemy. If they rain death on our enemy, shit, that's 5. But I mean, I like if it was up to me, every company would have a mantra, not a mission statement. A mission statement is 40 or 50 words long, right? It's like, we endeavor to create innovative, curve-jumping, paradigm-shifting, revolutionary products that exceed the expectations of our customers while we enable our employees to self-actualize their goals and make society a better place while killing as few dolphins as possible. That is our mission statement. And what I would rather have is something that you could go home and when your spouse asks you, so what kind of company did you see? You can remember, oh yeah, we saw Canva. What does Canva do, honey? Oh, Canva democratizes design. 2 words. I can describe Canva in 2 words: democratize design. So that would be the goal. In 2 or 3 words, can you summarize what your company does, because 2 or 3 words, I think, is the mental limit. So 2 or 3 words, a mantra, not a mission statement.
All right. I think we have really, really gained so much from this tonight, and there's no natural endpoint to this conversation, guys. So we promise to have you done by 7, and boy, has it been a rich session. So thank you. Let's give another round of applause.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. If I ever have another baby, we'll come to UCSF, but I'm 70 years old. That ain't going to happen.
Well, I look forward to seeing you in the lineup at Bolinas sometime.
Okay, that
Okay.
is going to happen. That will
Okay,
happen.
great. So we'll get the resources out to you that we promised, the Canva template. Don't forget to look up Think Remarkable. It's on Amazon, and it's really worth diving into. But we got probably the best experience that anyone who will read
But
the book will get.
you know what? If I may be honest, the best work that I've done in my career is my podcast. My podcast is by far the best work I've done in my
Great.
career. So if you go to my podcast, you can listen to the person who created Hintwater, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, Bob Cialdini. He's the father of influence, Carol Dweck, the mother of the growth mindset, Angela Duckworth, the mother of the grit mindset, Mike Maples, the venture capitalist. Let me tell you, my podcast is remarkable. Trust me when I tell you that. So.
Well, we're going to go find out for sure. Thank you for that, too.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, Guy. Thank you very much. So we're going to switch gears now. Yeah. No, we have some chairs coming. All right. So, and by the way, get up anytime you need to get food or drink and refresh. The session ends at 7:30, but we're very fortunate now to have with us Margaret Laws, who I mentioned before is the CEO of Hope Labs. She has a really rich history on her journey all the way to that position. So I'm going to ask her that as a first question. What has been her journey through the health innovation landscape that brought her to this point? Because I think many of you in the room are interested in frontline innovation. Not everybody's interested in forming a company, but there are many ways that you can use your frontline innovation skills, whether you're a clinician innovator, a scientist innovator, et cetera. So there are many ways to contribute into the ecosystem and be part of this multidisciplinary team sport. So as you know, that Margaret did start at California Healthcare Foundation, not started there. She has quite a bit more to share with you about the journey, but right before, when we first met, it was California Healthcare Foundation Innovation Program. So I have a few questions teed up for her, and then we'll also save time for questions. So this is more of a discussion. So we're going to switch formats over here. I am going to put up a slide here, though, because we're going to be asking you to look up Hope Labs. And so I'm just going to pop this up on the screen so you know what it looks like. And then, Margaret, why don't we go ahead and come on over and sit? Yep. There we go.
Is that on? Yes, it's on.
Yes. And I'm going to take the other mic. But as I promised, the first question is going to be, could you just share with us your journey through health innovation landscape to get to where you are right now and some of the lessons along the way?
Great, and I will not go all the way back, and I'm going to put this chair down a little bit. So great to see everybody tonight, and I'm really excited just to have this be a conversation. So hopefully that was such a great setup, and I have lots of thoughts, mostly very concurrent with Guy's, but I lead an organization called Hope Lab. We are, in fact, founded and funded by the founders of eBay, Pierre and Pam Omidyar. That was not a setup. I don't know where that came from. And we are one of several organizations they fund that do impact investing policy and grant-making work. Hope Lab happens to focus on the health and well-being of young people. At Hope Lab, we work kind of in 3 ways. We have an impact investment fund where we take philanthropic dollars, capital, we invest alongside of traditional venture investors, but we do it to really try to bring innovations to underserved populations, to young people or LGBTQ plus BIPOC, rural, underserved young people. So we often come in next to a traditional VC as a strategic investor, and we bring our networks and knowledge about Medicaid, the safety net, and young people to the table. We have a translational research program. So we actually have work that we do all around the country with researchers and academics, mostly psychologists, kind of social sciences and psychologists around the health and well-being and development of young people, try to translate that science into the products and services that kids use, and then learn from what happens with the products and services out in the market and do research on that. So as you can imagine, lots in social media and impacts of that. And then we have an innovation lab where we actually work mostly with young people themselves, trying to sort of think about this, concept of really engaging the end user, in your case, often patients, in our case, young people, in designing and developing solutions. So that's what we're doing at Hope Lab. Prior to that, as Honor pointed out, I spent 17 years at the California Healthcare Foundation. I started the policy program there in 1998 when the foundation was first getting started. Then I started a program called Innovations for the Underserved, again, focused on bringing innovations in healthcare service and technology to Medicaid and other underserved populations. And then finally, the last 5 years, I started a venture fund there, the CHF Health Innovation Fund, that similarly invests philanthropic money in for-profit companies with the goal of making sure those companies reach underserved populations. And before that, worked in all of the sectors, public, nonprofit, private sector, in global health. So I really, the way I describe the work that I do is really being at the intersection of sectors and really enjoying working both with people in the investment community as well as people, in community health centers and public hospitals, and really able to sort of do the translation between those worlds. One other thing, I teach in a course called Startup Garage at the business school in Stanford, and there we basically work with student teams who are developing companies. DoorDash came out of there. Several healthcare companies have come out the last few years. So I do spend a lot of time working with folks, taking their innovation ideas and bringing them into life. And did a little bit of work with biodesign before that, which I have some interesting thoughts about, because biodesign requires that the teams have engineering, physician or medical, and business members. And the way that those teams and the kind of perspectives they bring and the personalities they bring show up in pitches is a really interesting little tidbit.
Yeah, that's a great segue, because the reason I wanted you to lay out some of the background is Margaret's heard a zillion pitches, and she's also coached a zillion pitches. And so I've asked her just to share with us some of the pearls. Obviously, you heard some from Guy Kawasaki, but also there are many, many different ways pitches are received and prepped for. So I thought, Margaret, with your diverse background, being on all sides, because you've also had to pitch. In order to raise money, you have to pitch. So I'm wondering if you want to just start out with some tips that you would think of. And in this group, as I mentioned, we have pre-innovators all the way to serial innovators, but it always seems that there's some way to make a pitch better.
Absolutely. Well, yes, in fact, I do a lot of pitching. I've done pitching both to start these two venture funds, but also because everything we do at Hope Lab, we bring in other investors and funders as well. So we're pitching all the time. But I guess a Guy covered a lot of it. I think a few of the things I would double down on and maybe tell quick little stories around are showing up curious. His pearl was to take notes. But I think the reason I asked the question I asked was, I really appreciate it when people come in and say, how would you like to do this? Would it be helpful to see a demo? Because a lot of times what people do is they just start talking, and you're busy and you don't have a lot of time, and it's been 20 minutes, and to his point, you don't have any idea what the company does, what problem it's trying to solve. You don't know if you're going to see the demo. They haven't asked you what you want. And that, to me, it's just a wasted opportunity. So I think of it less as like a waste of my time. My time is my time. Everyone's time is valuable. But I think you really going in, having had even a very brief conversation about what would be most helpful today. What would be most helpful to you to learn about what I'm doing? So that's one. The second, and Guy didn't state it this way, but he alluded to it in one of his, and there was a great question about data. State the problem you're trying to solve and state it as simply as possible, recognizing that you actually know a whole lot about this problem. You've done PhD theses on it, you're a postdoc. So what is the problem you're trying to solve? And what are one or two facts or statistics that are really compelling? Not 100, not super detailed, but just, when I hear a pitch and somebody starts out with, I'll think of an example, someone's creating a migraine clinic company, and it's a friend of mine, so I was helping him out. And he gave really compelling statistics about the prevalence of migraine and significant headache and the relative lack of providers who have any specialization in that, and the lack of providers, long wait time, prevalence. Even that, unless you're pitching to someone who you know is a super, super deep expert in what you're doing, it's just such a grounding thing, because it starts the presentation out with, this is what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about a big problem, an unmet need. It's, often people are coached to tell a compelling story about their own experience. Often I don't know about folks in this room, but often a founder will come in and have had a family experience or a personal experience. And sometimes people go way too deep on the personal experience and forget the prevalence, potential impact thing. So I think that's a super important one. Showing that you are curious and that you're curious about what they care about and what they know. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times, I'll get people who come in and they pitch and they want to seem really knowledgeable. And so they're giving me a lecture about a topic that I know a lot about. And that doesn't ever feel good. So it doesn't make me think, like, I'll just assume that they're smart and they know a lot. It doesn't make me think that they're smarter. It makes me feel like they're being a little tone deaf. So I think as much as you want to establish that credibility, if you're curious and you can answer their questions, you'll establish the credibility that way. It's way better to establish credibility answering a question well on your feet than establish credibility by lecturing at someone. So those are a few. I kind of went through. I think I'm gonna skip to one that Guy didn't get into because he wasn't getting into healthcare as much. Who is your payer and why? Who pays for this and why do they pay for it? Even if it's a hypothesis, even if you're early, your hypothesis about the value that you're creating. We talk about a value proposition, I know, and we all talk, what is the value that's being created and what's your hypothesis about why that value is so compelling that someone will pay for it? Not why you think it should be paid for, but who it is actually that's going to do that. And I think a lot of times what we hear is, this is so important, the system should pay for it. But that doesn't answer the question of, this is going to actually reduce ED admissions, because we're going to do better monitoring of asthma, rescue inhaler use, and that's going to reduce costs because we're not going to see those inpatient admissions or those ED visits. You might not have proven that heavily yet, but that's your hypothesis. So, one example, I invested early in and worked with the company Omada. Many of you probably know that company, WM, and they did their first study by recruiting 30 people on Craigslist. And so when they came in to do their pitches, they didn't have definitive data. They hadn't done a big randomized controlled trial, but they actually had a hypothesis that they had tested and hypotheses that they developed based upon that. And that really was a compelling way in a very early stage to meet your potential investors.
I'm glad you brought up Omada. It's a really great example of an evidence-based company that continued to build evidence over time. And I actually refer my patients to it still. And also one that started in a certain disease state to prevent pre-diabetics from becoming diabetics, but has ported to other disease states as well. But the strengths they have is they brought in science early and kept building on it, but they also brought in behavioral science. Not just the disease science part of it. So well done. investing in Omada.
Innovata, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's very solid and has made a big impact in health.
And it's been a long road. It's a good.
Yes,
It's a,
and actually, one of the faculty here at UCSF, Carolyn Jasic, who helped implement the EMR here, she's a pediatrician. She has been their chief medical officer for a number of years, and she's just moved on to Verily. But she's one of the frontline innovators that would be also willing to be a mentor to people who want to reach out and talk about her innovator journey. So it was a very good example. One thing that wasn't talked about is as we go through the deck, and I think most of you already know the 10-slide outline, and we'll hand you resources for that. So it didn't seem the most effective to just list all those things, but picking out a couple of things. When you've described the problem and you're talking about your solution and why it's novel, there's a piece that I always look for in a deck, and I wanted to know what your thought on this was, how deeply to go into it. I call it the due diligence grid. It's the comparison of what else is out there that meets what you've described as the key functional requirements. What are they missing? What do you have? So how do you distinguish yourself from what else is out there? And I just wanted you to comment on that and how that plays into your receiving of the pitch.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I love that grid when I see it, because you may or may not completely agree with how the company has characterized all the other companies, but it's a great conversation piece because you can point to the place where they have an X where nobody else has an X and say, well, tell me about what you're doing in this, tell me about the functionality that you've created that's ticking this box that no one else is able to tick. So I think it's a good, clean comparison shows a few things. It shows that you actually do know what else is out there, and it shows that you've given some thought to differentiation. And I think that those are both. Again, you can convey. If you get 10 slides, it's a good use of a slide because you can convey a lot without. You don't have to say, "Well, I've been doing this for 15 years," and I da 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 da. You can just show the grid, and you can open up to questions. So I love that one.
Good. I wanted to circle back on a question that was asked, and I think this might be the last part of our conversation, then we'll open it up to the room. And that was, how do you close? How do you do the ask? I find that hard in every conversation, frankly. But, and Guy gave some super impactful wisdom on that, but I wonder if you have some practical tips that you could share with us.
Yeah, so first of all, I completely agree with him that the initial pitch conversation is about getting another conversation. So, what I'm indifferent between people having the financial ask at the end of the deck or not. It's helpful for me to know, are they raising? If so, who else is in? So if that's useful information to even have before they come in. Like we like to know before, are you just in exploration phase? Are you raising? Is somebody else in? Do you have a lead? So that kind of information about the ask is helpful. It's helpful to know what your ask is, even if you don't put it in the deck. So your ask to somebody you're pitching to as an investor shouldn't be, will you be my coach and help me develop this? Your ask should be, either I'd like your feedback. We're really early in the process, but it would be really valuable to me to have your feedback. And then the pressure's off them. They don't have to worry about whether they're committing funds or not, and they can give you honest feedback. And that's one kind of pitch where that's an ask. I'd like your feedback. Another kind of pitch is we're raising, we're trying to raise a $10 million Series A. We have $3 million commit, we have that information. And if that's the pitch that I'm getting, where there's an ask, what I want to see is probably a 12 to 18 month timeline of milestones. And so sources, what are you asking for the money for? So $10 million Series A, we want that to take us from this milestone to that milestone. The junctures along the way are X, Y, Z. So again, often those are in an appendix, that's fine. So that if you get to a point where somebody whom you're talking to says, hey, I'd like, I'm interested in learning more. And if you are raising, I'd like to understand the terms, where you are, that's a really, to me, that's a really helpful thing to have. And having somebody be able to show you a 12 to 18 month rough high level milestone chart, sources and uses chart is really helpful to me. I don't know if you,
Yeah,
that
I
you
think
agree, but
no, I think that's practical. You want to know that they're thinking ahead. But I'm thinking also, and so those are really great tips. And if you spin that around and you think about it, not just about meeting with an investor, but meeting with your chairman and saying, I'd like to carve out a half-day clinic a week or something out of your regular duties to work on this project. Think about the first meeting maybe just to really get them sold on the idea that it matters and that you're the right person to do it, and get the next meeting. But in the end, know how you want to end the conversation. What's the so what factor at the end of it? And give an opportunity for them to give you something, because most people feel invested in you if they're able to give you something, even if it's advice. Like you said, the feedback thing is really great. So oftentimes, even if it ends up being not money, but they may have valuable advice. So I think it's important in any conversation. And when I think about the pitch deck, it's influenced a lot of the way that I do have conversations, because it helps me plan and structure ahead of time. And it's also very respectful of their time, because the pitch deck really cuts to the chase. So think about it applied not just to talking to a VC, because that might be very far off in your future, or it might not be your path, but there are many ways that these tips can apply.
yeah, I mean, here's a problem I'm trying to solve. Here's what I'd like. I'd like time in my schedule. I'd like money. I'd like, whatever that is. And here's what I think the potential impact of that is going to be. So that sort of high level storyline, to your point, works for any kind of pitch.
And before you get to that last bit, I often, before I get to any ask them for feedback. What do you think of the idea? Where do you think that I should be filling in some gaps or whatever before you get to that ask? Because that's going to really inform and shape your ask on the spot. All right, I'd like to open this up to some questions, because rarely do we get a seasoned person like Margaret to just shoot questions to. I would like to know at the end if you would be willing to share some of the resources that you might use, because I know you have a lot of young people in Hope Labs that you're training as innovators, so I bet there's a lot of pitch training going on. So if you have resources, we'll put them in email and share them with other people.
Happy to.
All right.
Just one other topic on asks while you go out. You should ask for whom else should I be talking to. Be sensitive to who else should I be talking to, and could you connect me to them? So I think always who else should I be talking to, and then just be open to, can you connect me to them? Might be, not right now, but if you come back with something down, this particular thing, I might do that. Or sure, I'm actually happy to, I've got a colleague who knows a lot about this topic and would be interested, and I'll go ahead and make a connection. So I think it's you should ask. It shows, but don't ask in a assuming way, I guess I would say.
Hi, thank you very much. That was really interesting. One of my questions is, and I really liked how you catalyzed this with thinking on your feet. So what are some ways to prepare a frontline innovator to think on their feet? Or what are types of questions that you like to have in your back pocket that you commonly ask? How should frontline innovators be prepared to think on their feet?
It's a great question. I do, you won't get grilled in that way, but people will be looking to see how you think on your feet, because one of the things about an early stage venture is that you will have to pivot and pivot and pivot. And, whoever it is you're asking for help will want to see that you're not going to be daunted by a question. So I'd say a couple things. One, if you really don't know, you get a question you really don't know, don't be afraid to say, it's a great question. It's a great question. I'd love to I'll have to get back to you on that. Here's something I do know about that. So using a little bit of a pivot of, don't feel like a deer in the headlights. Be prepared to get asked a question you don't know the answer to, and think about how you'll respond to that question. And not in a defensive way. Like people are happy to hear, that is a fantastic question. We've been trying to look at this, but we haven't quite gotten to that yet. And if I do get an answer to that, I'd love to get back to you about that. Just to practice that. Nate, I think when Guy said practice 10 times, I mean, when I came to Hope Lab, I started something I brought from the California Healthcare Foundation, practice for our board meetings. And people were like, well, that's crazy. But you have to do it, because what we do is you practice with a group of people and you ask them, come up with 3 questions that I might get asked. And then we practice having the person answer those questions. So we do practice sessions with as close a kind of approximation as we can get of who the audience is, or just put the hat on of our board member and tell me what question you're going to have. And that, I think, is a really helpful thing to call on your friends and colleagues for. Think about not what question do you have because you know this topic, to an infinitesimal level, but what question might you have if you were a board member? I made a little bit of a joke about biodesign and how the team was always a business student, an engineer, and a doctor. And business students, engineers, and doctors are have been educated and prepared in very different ways. And, the teams were rich and strong because they had all 3 backgrounds and types of knowledge on them. But definitely the people who had been prepared to think on their feet were the business students. And so there was just an interesting thing to think about what you can learn from the other disciplines and just stretch yourself a little bit in that direction. And I think that practicing taking questions and answering confidently, even if your answer is, I don't know, is a great skill to learn if you're more engineering or medicine inclined.
I think we do have time for another question. And while you're doing that, I'd like someone to come up with a punchline. A business student, an engineer, and a doctor walked into a pitch session.
What happens?
Thank you. My question is actually following up on that. I wanted to say that we as academics are very used to saying, I don't know, as a conference, like when we give a talk and somebody asks a question, we say, oh, that's a great question. I wish I had the funding or time to explore that, but I don't know that. But I guess that when we want to pitch to somebody who we want to say that, hey, come and invest your money on my idea, I would think that it wouldn't be great saying, I don't know. I like the way of saying that, okay, I'll get back to you on that. My co-founder, who's actually the CTO or CSO, is not here. But actually, do they try to grill you to see how much you know? Or is it acceptable to say, I don't know? Because I know that in the scientific community and academic community, it comes as very natural. Yep. But wouldn't they think that, oh, if you don't know that well, why are you here asking for money or something like that? Thanks.
No, it's a great question. And it kind of depends on the context. So I guess I would say a couple of things. One, I do think it's always good so rather to say, I don't know, I wish I had the funding to study that, I might say, I don't know, I have some ideas or I have a hypothesis about what might be true there, and this is what it is. That's one category. Another category is I'm taking this pitch by myself and my technical co-founder isn't with me. And a lot of times I'm working with companies that have a non-medical or non-clinical founder who has a clinical co-founder. And I always advise them to bring the clinical co-founder or the technical co-founder to the pitch. Because again, it's a much less likely that that's going to happen. So I think you raise a great point, which is if it's a technical company or a clinical company, you don't want half the knowledge and half the ability to ask questions not to be there. So I think that's probably the best piece of advice I can offer is, once you're at a stage where it's not an idea and you're like, I've got this idea, this is how I want to pursue it, but I've got this thing, this is how it works. I've got this thing, it's based on this research. Then you want the person in the room who can answer those questions.
I think it's such a great topic too, because you don't want to risk losing trust. So one of Guy's favorite words starts with a B and the second word's an S. And so don't just BS them. Because if you lose trust or you lose credibility in that meeting, there won't be another one. So it's honest sometimes to say that I don't know that. I think it's important. I'm going to find out for you and come back to you. And that, of course, opens the door for the next communication. But it's really good. It's a good point to bring up. And it's also good to talk about the different cultures around how we answer and address those things. One thing I will say is that the multidisciplinary team does matter, and
Yes.
And being able to field the questions. But I think one of the most important things you want to not risk is your credibility and their trust in you. I really want to thank Margaret. This has been a very, very helpful, pragmatic session to follow up with. And the great news is she's in San Francisco and part of our network and has contributed to the development of much of our thoughts here. And I really want to thank you over the years for all your experience and contributions, and for tonight taking time to do this. Thank you.
And thanks for having me. It was fun to get to see Guy with all of you, and happy to chat with folks if I know that the thing that I'm primarily working on right now is probably a little far afield from what most of you are building in, but happy to take general questions or just be an ear if you need one along the way.
That's an incredible offer. Thank you. And also, I wanted to ask you, do you take interns over at Hope Labs? Or you have a program for that? Because a lot of our frontline innovators look for those extern experiences.
We do, and actually it's interesting, the research team is the team that most frequently takes interns. We don't have it's a rolling thing. We don't have a really regular program, but we've got a few people on the research team pretty regularly have interns. So it's a small organization. We don't take a lot, but if it's something that is of real interest to people, let me know, and I can always let folks on the research team know. They tend to be reasonably specialized. Mm-hmm. So if there do happen to be people who are working in the domains we're working in, but I appreciate that those opportunities are always important. So
check out the website, Hope Labs. Thank you, everybody, for your attention tonight. Really appreciate it. And we'll send you resources that we talked about, and we'll also send you the next flyer for April. And so we'll have an April session, a May session, and we are always looking for feedback on what of this was useful to you, what might you want to see in an innovator curriculum, if that became available to you. Okay, thank you very, very much. I want to thank Nate Prorock also, and we've got support back here from our team. Inder's here also supporting. So the final thing before you leave, you should know that Carlotta is our first Innovator Enrichment intern, and she can tell you how that's going for her, but she's been a great, great help to us. She had startup experience. She's back in her doctoral sciences work again, so she straddles both worlds and is also a good consultant if you need to say, well, what has that been like? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Have a safe drive home.